On May 1st, China's CCTV Military Channel reported that Ye Hui, a top technician at the China Aerospace Science and Industry Corporation, CASIC, number 699 factory, possesses top-notch grinding technology. With his skilled hands, he can achieve ultra-precision grinding, down to 5 nanometers. However, this announcement was met with widespread skepticism online. The report described Ye Hui as a craftsman in aerospace superposition work, tasked with grinding ultra-thin materials to the nanometer level. To ensure that fingerprints do not affect the surface roughness, he even smoothed out his fingerprints. The report highlighted that the surface roughness of the tantalum sheet ground by Ye Hui reached the 5 nanometer level, detectable only with special instruments. Ye Hui also shared his grinding secrets, stating that practice makes perfect. When working on high precision parts, he mastered a unique technique. 100 strokes can't compare to this one stroke. And in the end, it's this one stroke that makes it perfect. The report emphasized that Ye Hui's breakthrough in ultra-precision grinding of such ultra-thin materials exceeds the top levels internationally. But who can believe that nanometer-level precision can be achieved by hand? To put 10 nanometers precision into perspective, it is roughly 1/10,000th of a hair's diameter, equivalent to the length of 100 atoms. How did Ye Hui achieve this? This report was reposted by China's state media, Global Times, boasting ultra-precision grinding to 5 nanometers with a pair of skillful hands. This report once again sparked ridicule on the internet. One comment read, "How foolish and ignorant does CCTV have to be to produce such news to cheer on the little pink patriots?" This clearly highlights their technological backwardness. The little pink must now believe that China's future chips can be handmade, and China can revert to the era of handcrafts, right? Another commenter remarked on China's recent chip technology efforts. So we are not far from making chips by hand, and the lithography technology is about to break through, right? Our chips are truly handcrafted now. On a Q&A website in mainland China, someone commented, "This style of promoting handcrafts work for intangible cultural heritage crafts, but it's confusing when applied to mechanical production. It gives the impression that the achievements of the second industrial revolution, which replaced workshops, have been reversed. Handmade 5 nanometer is quite sensational." Even if the craftsman is truly skilled and the production quantity is low, such talents and skills are not easily replicated. In recent years, the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda department has blatantly fabricated and exaggerated claims boasting about leading in technology and military. This is reminiscent of the Great Leap Forward era under former party leader Mao Zedong in the 1950s and 60s. As one comment stated, this is probably the new equivalent of Xi Jinping's new era version of 10,000 caddies per mu, which is around 0.16 acres, referring to Mao's era of exaggerated grain production claims. The Great Leap Forward was essentially the implementation of Mao Zedong's Chinese dream in the late 1950s. To surpass Britain and catch up with the US, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward movement, during which exaggerated reports of grain production were rampant. Initially, Hubei province claimed a yield of 10,000 caddies per mu, 62,500 per acre. Subsequently, local governments competed to report even higher figures, accumulating in a production team on the outskirts of Tianjin claiming an output of 750,000 caddies per acre. In response to the report on China's top technician manually grinding 5 nanometer parts, Akio Yatai, the Taipei bureau chief of Japan's Sankei Shimbun, commented that the reporter might not realize that nanometer is so small that it cannot be controlled manually. China often flaunts the craftsmanship of engraving characters on rice grains, which is essentially micro-carving. If 2 lines of Tan poetry, which contains 14 characters, were carved on a grain of rice, each character's diameter would be approximately 1 millimeter, equivalent to 1,000 micrometers or 1 million nanometers. The diameter of the COVID-19 virus is about 120 nanometers. Yatai noted that while humans invented optical microscopes in the 17th century, we could not observe nanometer-scale viruses until the invention of electron microscopes in the 1930s. If the Chinese technician can indeed manually grind parts to 5 nanometers, physics and biology textbooks worldwide would need to be rewritten. Ye Hui emphasized that the CCP's state media routinely uses absurdly false propaganda to brainwash the public. This report is another typical example, which is even more outrageous than the 10,000 caddies per mu claims of Miles' era. After all, 10,000 caddies per mu only exaggerated production by dozens of times. But this claim exaggerates by tens of thousands of times. It's no wonder there's a comment that remarked, in China, only the scammers are real, everything else is fake. In recent years, the US government has continuously escalated the tech trade war with China, restricting the country's ability to enhance its domestic chip production. To reduce dependency on foreign chips, Xi Jinping has repeatedly called for a tough battle to overcome key technological barriers. This has spurred a chip-making boom in China under his direct push. Since 2014, China has launched a nationwide chip-making movement. Ambitious integrated circuit industry plans, often targeting hundreds of billions, have led to the proliferation of semiconductor industrial parks. Local governments have been competing to establish investment funds and build facilities. Overnight, tens of thousands of chip companies were created. However, despite the massive investment from China Integrated Circuit Industry Investment Fund, also known as the Big Fund, technological breakthroughs have been elusive. In just over a year, more than 5,000 chip companies quietly opt for deregistration. The Big Fund is a government-owned enterprise. Currently, China's domestic chip manufacturing equipment has not yet reached world-class levels, so the country still relies heavily on imports. Since 2020, the United States has increasingly imposed restrictions on China. Chinese manufacturers added to the US entity list have utilized equipment from Japan and the Netherlands to establish several production lines. In March of this year, Bloomberg reported that the Chinese government is raising funds for the third phase of the Big Fund, with a fundraising goal of 300 billion yuan. This is aimed at accelerating China's research and development in cutting-edge semiconductor chip technology and countering increasingly stringent export restrictions imposed by the US and its allies in the chip sector. As the Big Fund significantly ramps up its third phase fundraising, the US government is coordinating with countries such as the Netherlands, Germany, Japan, and South Korea to further tighten export restrictions on China regarding semiconductor chip technology, equipment, and high-end AI chips. The US-China chip war has been ongoing for 5 years now. In this technological struggle between Beijing and Washington, Huawei has long been at the center. Huawei is perceived as a company backed by the Chinese government, with strong suspicions from various countries that it installs backdoors in its export products for technological espionage on behalf of the CCP. It is also accused of providing technological support to countries like Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. Domestically, Huawei has received unanimous positive coverage from Chinese media, to the extent of being closely tied to China's national image. Supporting Huawei is often seen as a patriotic act. Since 2019, the US has imposed a series of export restrictions and sanctions on Huawei, ranging from its software, chip manufacturing, and 5G component supplies. This severely impacted Huawei's smartphone business, even pushing it to the brink of exiting the market. On May 7th, the US Department of Commerce announced the revocation of some chip export licenses to Huawei. Subsequently, Intel and Qualcomm confirmed that their products were included in the new ban. Following NVIDIA, the United States has now blocked 2 more major companies from supplying advanced AI chips to Huawei. This move aims to prevent Huawei from gaining a lead in the AI PC sector. NVIDIA has faced multiple restrictions on exporting advanced AI chips to China for similar reasons. At the same time, the U.S. Department of Commerce Bureau of Industry and Security announced that 36 Chinese chip companies and research institutions were added to the entity list on national security grounds. So, what is the actual progress of China's in-chip research? In August 2023, Huawei launched the flagship 5G smartphone Mate 60 Pro, designed to compete with Apple's phones, featuring the advanced 7nm Kirin 9000S chip made by SMIC. This quickly drew a reaction from the US, and by the end of the year, the US Department of Commerce sent dozens of letters to SMIC's American suppliers suspending their licenses to sell products to SMIC. During that time, 140 Chinese media outlets live streamed the launch event with various comments like "Invincible Huawei" and "US sanctions are futile" trending online. Bloomberg, citing informed sources, reported that Huawei and SMIC used American technology to produce advanced chips in China in 2023. SMIC leveraged technology from California-based Applied Materials Inc. and Lam Research Corp. To develop a 7-nanometer chip for Huawei. SMIC had been blacklisted by the US in 2020 due to suspected ties with the Chinese military-industrial complex. However, the Mate 60 Pro was soon found to have significant flaws. Firstly, despite claiming 5G technology breakthroughs, Huawei's official technical specifications did not mention anything about 5G. Additionally, the 7-nanometer Kirin 9000S chip it featured was considered commercially inadequate. Due to the Netherlands' ban on ASML exporting extreme ultraviolet EUV equipment to China, SMIC achieved the 7-nanometer level using the previous generation's deep ultraviolet DUV equipment. Unlike EUV machines, which require only one exposure to produce 7-nanometer chips, DUV equipment relies on multiple exposure techniques, significantly reducing yield rates. In February this year, the Financial Times reported that SMIC's 7-nanometer process yield was less than one-third of Taiwan's TSMC's, with costs being 40 to 50% higher. On April 18th, Huawei launched the Pura 70 series, and Chinese media touted this phone as a significant milestone. They claimed that a teardown by the Japanese electronics consulting company Formolo showed that over 90% of its components were domestically produced, but Formolo quickly denied even performing a teardown on the Pura 70. However, Reuters commissioned two companies to tear down the Pura 70 Pro and indicated that the Pura 70 had a higher level of domestic components than the Mate 60, though it could not provide an exact percentage. The Pura 70's Kirin 9010 chip still used a 7-nanometer process, showing little progress from the Mate 60's Kirin 9000S. This finding is significant as it demonstrates that China's chip manufacturing capabilities have indeed slowed down. When Huawei released its new phone, U.S. Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo was visiting China. In an interview with CBS News 60 Minutes on April 21st, Raimondo said, "What it tells me is the export controls are working because that chip is not nearly as good. It's years behind what we have in the United States." A senior manager in the IC design from Taiwan, Brad Liao, stated that the teardown results of Huawei's new phone still use existing 7-nanometer technology rather than the rumored 5-nanometer technology, aligning with the earlier predictions. Given that SMIC's 7-nanometer yield is only 30%, using the same equipment for 5-nanometer production would yield about 10%, making large-scale production extremely difficult. SMIC's first quarter financial report shows that its revenue for the first quarter of 2024 was $1.75 billion, a year-on-year increase of 19.7%. But its net profit for the first quarter was $71.8 million, a year-on-year decrease of 69%. Brad Liao indicated that SMIC's 70% plunge in first quarter net profit suggests that the substantial orders for Huawei's 7-nanometer chips did not bring profits to SMIC. Therefore, SMIC may stagnate at the 7-nanometer level. In contrast, companies like TSMC, as well as those in South Korea and the US, will continue to advance their semiconductor processes, widening the gap between SMIC and the world's leading standards. An associate researcher at Taiwan's Chunhua Institution for Economic Research's International Economics Division, Tai Chi-Yen, pointed out that China's greatest weakness is the subpar manufacturing processes of its domestic chip foundries, which lag behind TSMC by about 2 generations. He also added that the US currently imposes strict restrictions on the flow of hardware and talent to China. If these restrictions persist, access to advanced technology from abroad will slow down, with immediate effects mitigated by existing personal networks. However, if the ban continues, it will eventually hinder China's IC design and the entire IC industry. A series of harsh US sanctions, wave after wave, have been merciless. The market's popular saying is that the US aims to drive China's semiconductor industry back to the Stone Age, predicting severe damage to China's chip industry. Chinese industry insiders familiar with the semiconductor field analyze that given China's capabilities, no amount of investment will produce high-end chips. This is because China's foundational materials science is very outdated, relying on imported materials for assembly, which does not count as technological advancement. With deep ties to the CCP, Huawei serves as a barometer and frontline in the US-China tech war. Its products are often seen as symbols of the CCP's so-called technological innovation and self-reliance. Whenever Huawei releases a new product, CCP propaganda will definitely praise it. On May 16th, rumors spread that Huawei was accused of faking a demonstration of its large model text-to-image capability during a product launch. The controversy began on May 10th during a technical discussion at the Kunpeng Accent Developer Conference. Huawei demonstrated the MX-RAG SDK function, showing how to develop RAG applications with just a few lines of code. According to circulating videos and chat screenshots, when Huawei demonstrated the text-to-image function, pressing Ctrl-C interrupted with process, revealing the code time.sleep (6). This led to accusations that the process paused for 6 seconds to retrieve a preset image, suggesting that the text-to-image result was not generated by the large model but manually manipulated. Critics accuse Huawei of faking the AI computation process at a high-tech launch, simulating the process with time.sleep (6) to display pre-prepared results. Ascend responded that the image were generated in real time using an open-source large model. This code include time.sleep (6) to wait for the real-time generation of image by the external open-source model, not to retrieve preset images. The demonstration used real code, which will be available on the Ascend community site for developers to use and provide feedback. In 2019, Huawei officially launched the Ascend AI chip, touted as the most powerful AI processor at the time. According to Huawei's website, the Ascend chip aims to improve performance and efficiency in areas such as smartphones, cloud computing, and data centers. By developing its own chips, Huawei not only enhanced product competitiveness, but also reduced reliance on foreign chip supplies and strengthened self-reliance. An AI developer told Chinese media that it is hard to say for sure, but the staged demonstration is understandable. Companies are reluctant to show live demos that might fail, so many demos involve some degree of faking. He speculated that Huawei's demo might have been rushed to capitalize on trending online topics. Huawei's executive director and chairman of the board of directors of the consumer BG, Richard Ye, often uses the phrase "far ahead," which was among the top 10 internet catchphrases in 2023. At the end, he mentioned "far ahead" at least 5 times and "ahead" more than 20 times, leading to widespread ridicule accusing Huawei of arrogance. Under intense UN sanctions, the slogan seems to have been banned. On April 2nd, Titanium Media founder Zhao Hejuan revealed in her column that Huawei CEO Ren Zhengfei had to issue an internal ban on Richard Ye. Each time Ye mentioned "far ahead," he will be fined 10,000 yuan.